All leads back to control. The government controls what we eat. They control what we think. They control what we feel. And then we wake up one day and be like, damn, I got...
But isn't that American dream? That American dream is... Because there's more people that live that type of fucking American reality. But isn't that American dream? That American dream is. Because there's more people that live that type of fucking American reality. But isn't that American dream? That American dream is. Because there's more people that live that type of fucking American reality.
Q9, my futon, hold it up and smoke it. Transgression, a progression of a war we ain't asked for. Transgression, a progression of a war we ain't asked for.
It's madness, yo. All the things that we could talk about.
Call it.
But let's talk about these urban circumstances real quick.
And basically, it's
we got this.
So,
revolution.
Winner of frosty hand. Muhammad is the fame's name, forever stand.
Standing on royal fusing of justice for the few, ridiculed by the pale terrorists, bent on genocidal obsession, rooted in fear of neglection and abandonment, fueled by nightmares of ancestors' jealousy.
because at the end of the day, I still want to be able to I don't dislike George Washington.
The kind of friends I think our friends should be like my friends. My friends are the kind of friends I think everyone needs. My friends see the things at times I don't see. My friends hate the police.
What has changed?
Are deemed the criminals, and the blacks are deemed the criminals.
Shut up and help.
Reflection ain't nothing but the inner child trying to see you. You gonna look? You gonna pick up that book?
Lord, keep me far from His face. Guide me through night and day. Teach me your ways. Show me the righteous way to sway. Lord, can you teach me, please? Show me the way, I'd say. Grand Risings, and welcome back to another episode of the Urban Conservative with Chaz Neal. We're excited to have you join us on this journey of thoughtful discourse and community engagement. The Urban Conservative is proudly sponsored by the Leon Black Network, an organization committed to promoting transparency, truth, and accountability in our media landscape. Here at the Urban Conservative, our mission remains steadfast, to bring you the latest news directly from the streets, addressing critical topics such as gun violence, crime, politics, and perhaps most importantly, exploring solutions to the profound challenges our communities face. As we embark on this third season, the focus is clear. It's time to actively contribute to the transformation of our communities for the better. How can we achieve this? The answer lies in a multifaceted approach that starts with reconnecting with our core family values. Strengthening our sense of community is paramount, fostering bonds that transcend the barriers that often divide us. Moreover, it involves embracing our foundational roots, recognizing the historical and cultural threads that weave through the fabrics of our society. In this season, we're calling for more than words. We seek action. It's a plea to move beyond mere rhetoric and engage in tangible, impactful initiatives that contribute to positive change. The time for empty words has passed. Now more than ever, we need to put our convictions into action. Together, united by a common purpose, we can make a substantial and lasting difference in the well-being of our communities. So join us on this journey as we explore not only the challenges, but but also the opportunities for growth and progress. Together, let's turn our shared vision for stronger, safer, and more connected communities into a reality. Thank you for being a part of the Urban Conservative with Chaz Neal, a platform dedicated to fostering change and making a positive impact on the world around us. Shut up and help. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. I wanted to, before I get into today's episode, because the news that, well, honestly, I want to, one of my, I don't even want to call them somebody that I look up to, and that we exchange knowledge and information. And they sent me yesterday, Miss CB, I'm not going to put their name out there, but sent me a quote from George Orwell. And it really made me think, because we have one thing is that I know that a lot of people don't like the truth. They don't like to hear facts. They like to live in that Disney, world. And I kind of feel like that hurts us more, and I've learned that, little white lies might make a person feel good, but when the truth comes out, it really does hurt them. And it can hurt a lot of things, because if, and that's one thing that I'm having to learn. And now I'm looking at politicians, I'm looking at, our leaders kind of weird, because I'm reading this legislation and I'm looking at, history, and then I'm listening to, the readings of Nat Turner and, Malcolm, Marcus Garvey, and so many others that I was never introduced to, growing up. So much, not these stories anyways. And I really thought about the whole George Orwell quote. And I'm going to read it real quick, and I found a video that I think is, because it relates to today's times. And I think, people want to call it conspiracy theories, or, but why is it a conspiracy theory? Because we've seen it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have people calling it out, and still we don't want to pay attention, or we don't want to, we just don't want to face it, because it's a dark reality. It's a very dark, finding out that a lot of things that we have been told is a lie, or, it's not the truth. It's little bits and pieces of, like a trail. They'll give it to us, but to really honestly get to the goal line, to get to the promised land, you got to sometimes take your own route, because that route is going to lead you through trials and tribulations that you necessarily don't need to go through. I think once we figure that out, excuse me, we will definitely figure it out, because George Orwell said that who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. And it makes, I just want to really people to think about that. And because what did Malcolm always tell us, right? And I'm going to always go back to that, brother, because, listening to Malcolm and putting it into today's times, I do see it where they try to feed the celebrities. It's a lot of tokenism. Because once you really start to get to the nitty gritty of this legislation, you see that they are disfranchising us. And it's not just, it's primarily Black Americans, but really it's to disfranchise poor people, because at the end of the day, you look at what's happening in America right now, right? Because just right now, this morning, right? What is going on this morning that people are having a problem with? Everybody's having a problem with their phones. Nobody's got service. So we see right here that SOS only. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. So this is trending on Twitter right now is SOS only, and you see AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, leave the world behind trending. Now, if people don't remember what happened in them, I'm telling you, man, people that they program us to prepare for things that are about to happen, and we don't even understand it. See, watch. I just watched Leave the World Behind last night, and people don't even understand it because they're programming our brains to literally prepare for things that are about to happen. And we see them as conspiracy theories, or we'll call people crazy, you know. But at the end of the day, the people that were calling out these things that were going on, where are they at? They're no longer here. They're dead. They're dead. Any whistleblower, Gary Webb, who whistleblew about the CIA's involvement in drugs and guns, when that story broke, they killed that man. No, you're not crazy though, bro. That's the whole crazy thing, Robert. I wish people would pay attention, because I literally feel like there is so much going on that they've literally put out there, and because they'll see nobody's going to take it serious, because at the end of the day, we're programmed not to take it serious, because we're comfortable calling people crazy. We're okay with calling people that are really out here telling the truth, and we'll alienate them, and we'll see what our government will do to people that come out and speak out, because our own leaders are scared. So what does that show us? If our own leaders are scared to come out and face the reality and face the truth, come on. It's because we the people are until we figure out that we have the power and no political party is ever going to save us, because our Constitution allows us to save us. We don't need Biden. We don't need Trump. We don't need Ilhan Omar. We don't need Latrice Vitale, Cedric Frazier, Bobby Joe Champion. We don't need none of them cats. What we need is a united front of the people. And what's crazy is I see a lot of, and I don't want to get too off on the subject, but, you know, we sit there and we look at, you know, right now you have this movement for Trump. What is that really going to do? If we can't change things locally, what does it matter what the executive power can do, right? Because all you're going to cause is a war between states and the government and the federal government. That's literally what you're going to cause, because you're going to have these sanctuary states. If people would read that sanctuary state bills, right, are the sanctuary cities where the feds aren't allowed to come in. They're, you know, the certain counties will fight back. It's crazy. I know, and that's what's people need to pay attention, and they don't want to pay attention because they're comfortable. They would rather go twerk. They would rather go care about who's fucking who. They don't care about that the world, because I'll tell you right now, is nobody's listening to the NATO military leaders who are telling their own people in their country to prepare, to stock up on water, candles, basic necessities, because something's coming. They don't know when, but it's soon. And we won't even listen to our own people, because at the end of the day, we'll say they're crazy, because how many people knew about the Fulton County hack? That's not public. That should be something that is talked about nationally, that you have a group that hacked into a county and is holding them for ransom. And it's just, and they're not even saying if they got the county government website back yet. All they're saying is that they have theirs. But how much information was taken? How much information was stolen? You know, because that happened in Minneapolis with the Minneapolis Public Schools. You know, there's a Twitter page that I just found this morning with DHS workers. And if people don't know what that is, that's the Department of Human Services. And there's a bunch of workers that have a Facebook page. And damn, when you go through it, man, there's like so much corruption. And then I see why we live in the environments that we live in, because we're okay with it. We vote to put these people in power, right? And that's why I want to talk about this, because these are the people that control, right? Right? Because Orwell did give us a warning, and it was on power because of the past and the present. I see a lot of niggas, black people right now, talking about how great of a man that Hitler was, right? Hitler was a totalitarian. Hitler was a totalitarian that believed in eugenics, right? Because here's the thing that people don't want to talk about. It wasn't just Jews that were killed in Germany. If you were not full-blooded German, they didn't like you either. So blacks, whatever you were, if you were not full-blooded German, because it was all about eugenics. And I see a lot of people want to bypass the eugenics conversation and what that really is about purity. Y'all don't want to talk about that, right? Because that's literally what Hitler was doing. It wasn't just about the Jewish people. He was probably trying to cleanse them, because at the end of the day, we're literally supporting Israel, and I can't say his name, right? But the president, and he's literally trying to do the same thing, is to get rid of Muslims. Leave the World Behind is a movie. It's a Netflix movie with Julia Roberts. People really should watch that, because there's a lot of things in that movie that literally leave little clues that have happened in history, in the past, right? And people will say, Google it, understanding. Google it, and if you Google "Leave the World Behind," let me actually, you know what? Let me show y'all, because I want people to see, because there was little clues in this movie about certain things that people weren't paying attention to. So I want to show people this. All right. Damn, I don't really want to play a long ass video though. You know what? Fuck it. Let's get into it. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. Let's just play this video for a little bit. I'm not going to play it for very long, but I do want people to what leave the world behind, that literally you should be able to know. Oh, come on. Don't be doing all of this.
Since its release, well, until Chicken Run came out. This movie has stirred up a lot of controversy and discussion over the messages that were conveyed, its use of symbolism, and its open-ended conclusion. After leaving it a bit of time to allow the dust to settle, I thought it was worth sharing every hidden detail that I found within the movie, along with calling out the meaning behind the symbolic nature of it, such as the use of the Friends TV show, the use of the color blue, the contrasting red, the QR code, the painting changes, and many other things. So let's get into it. Here is every hidden detail and use of symbolism in Leave the World Behind. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Oh, and by the way, if my voice sounds messed up, it's because I've got a cold. Yeah. The Friends TV show. The importance of the Friends TV show was definitely an interesting incorporation in the movie, as it was going around in my head for a long while afterwards, making me wonder about what it could have actually meant. And I feel there could be multiple different interpretations of what the focus on the show's incorporation could have been. There was a mention of Friends being watched because it was nostalgic of a time that never really existed, And I think that's something that Rose wanted. Not only did we see the binge-watching culture being highlighted through Rose, something which was shown to us by her watching Friends, but us also hearing that she binged through many other shows in the past. But I feel in order to escape the chaos which was unfolding in front of her, she wanted to escape to a life which almost didn't exist, one with no consequence and where there was no danger, something which TV often provides us. Her interest and yearning to know so much about what happened in the finale was something which made me think of a couple of different things too. One was that Rose was almost aware that darker times were on the horizon. She knew that things were going on long before many other people in the family did, but because she was younger, they didn't listen to her. Rose ultimately wanted that sense of resolution with the TV show, something which we didn't get as a viewer of this movie. Plus, it was something which also lent into the reliance of technology, and without the final season being found on DVD, she would have never got to watch that ending that she was craving, showing that life in the modern day was reliant on tech, and that if it does just stop, then everybody would be lost. Everyone using technology at the start and then not being able to. Within the movie, there was a lot of emphasis on the collapsing of everybody knowing what was going on when the tech started failing. For example, we saw that the TV stopped working, the news app was sending through the news in a mixed up state, the cell networks were down, Wi-Fi was down, and the radio stopped working too. The very idea of being cut off from the world was something which was driving everybody insane, and even down to not being able to watch a TV show almost exposed everybody to the world that was actually in front of them, not the one that they hear about or see in fictional shows. Before the issues happened, there was a moment where Amanda was speaking on the phone, Clay was changing the radio, Archie was on his phone, and Rose was watching Friends on her tablet. This was all done in one continual shot. So there was a real emphasis on the going round seeing everybody using a piece of technology, something which they weren't able to do once the issue started occurring. With this movie being called Leave the World Behind, I feel them all being consumed by their tech, and their response to it in the present day was something which showed that every time they picked up their device, they were leaving the world behind and being consumed by something which transported them out of it. There was also a moment where everything was offline, yet we still saw both Rose and Archie sleeping with their devices close to them, knowing full well that they didn't work. Rose with Friends with a "you're offline" message being present, and Archie with his phone in his hand, showing the comfort in just having them close by in case they came back on. I feel this was a definite nod at society in the present day. The use of the color blue. The color blue was something which was used all throughout this movie, whether it be subtle or not. For example, to name a few, the bedroom wall, the iPad case, the car, the swimming pool, the grocery store, the swimsuits of several people, the umbrellas on the beach towels, the blue light from the TV, several items of clothing on multiple characters, the blue hue of the lighting of scenes. Yeah, I think you get the gist. It was the main color that was used when things were as they were expected to be. For example, 2 guarantees, the sky is blue and the sea is too. Hence why I feel subconsciously all of those things that you'd expect to just be there were represented with the color blue. Blue is said to symbolize stability, and I think the use of the color blue was something which showed the stable nature of the world at that time in the opening section. The car was running as expected, they were visiting the store, they were at the beach, and things were just like what they'd come to expect. This is until the ship docked on the beach. Blue is also said to be relaxing and is able to prevent from chaos, so it was almost used as a way of going against the grain, and instead of using red, which would have represented danger in those situations and shown us that things weren't okay, it went with the more calming, stable blue, to keep the environment as a non-threatening place in terms of a visual perspective. The use of the color red. Whilst blue was the main color that appeared in the movie, even when it came to the lighting choices and the hue of the overall movie, there were a few different occasions where the color red got a main focus. We saw this with the logo of the movie, when the leaflets were being dropped out of the sky, the Thorns' front door, the walls inside of the Thorns' house, and the light that was being emitted into the entrance of the bunker. I think the red in this instance is something which is symbolic of the uncertainty of what is to come, and the danger and fear.
So you think you know Wix, do you really? First up, we've got...
The use of blue was something which felt like it was done to lean into the comfort, stability, and the ye old faithful side of things. Whereas the red door, you don't know what's behind it. The red walls leading to something which is down the stairs that you're unaware of, and also the red light of the bunker. Again, not knowing what's behind the door. It showed that it kind of expressed that intrigue and uncertainty, hence why red was used in those few situations where the uncertainty was an immediate guaranteed thing. The Jenga tower falling over. There was a moment in this movie which lasted all of a couple of seconds, and it was one which stood out when compared to everything else that happened. This was the Jenga tower falling over. Prior to George and Ruth arriving at the property, they were playing a game of Jenga, which got interrupted when they had to answer the door. Once George and Ruth were inside of the property, and we saw that the emergency broadcast on the television was being played, and the first sign that something was going to go wrong, out of nowhere, the Jenga tower, without any prompting whatsoever, just collapsed and fell onto the table. To me, this was it symbolizing what was eventually going to happen to the country, and it was foreshadowing the collapsing of the buildings and the city across the river at the end of the movie. The QR code. Partway through the movie, we saw that on the breaking news segment that managed to appear, there was a QR code that was hidden amongst the United States map. This QR code takes you to a website which is focused on a real-life tourist attraction, Lake Shawnee's abandoned amusement park in Mercer County, an amusement park which has a dark history to it. This amusement park was built upon a Native American burial ground and was a place where some children that visited it had died whilst in attendance there. It was when the developers were eventually going to develop a residency over the plot of land that they discovered the remains, but they ultimately chose to not develop it any further. The director hasn't mentioned why this was incorporated into the movie, but it could be a subtle nod to tragedies that happened in the past, yet life goes on. People forget and history repeats itself. The shot of the door frame. This was a shot which at the end of the movie, it made me want to go back to it because it showed how far the characters had gone together. There was no other shot like it throughout the entire runtime. With this movie being built upon people having their set prejudices and leading by them in life, rather than taking people at face value, this was something which summed that up. Amanda hated people. She said it at the start of the movie. She tarnished everybody with the same brush, and we saw that she didn't trust GH and Ruth, whereas Clay was the opposite in this situation, and he was willing to help. However, at the end, with us seeing that one of the main consequences of the attack that was taking place on the country was to get people to turn on themselves, and in order to survive, they'd need to put their prejudices aside. This shot truly reflected the state of the nation at that point. Love thy neighbor? I think not. The painting changes. Throughout the movie, there were 6 main paintings that were featured. However, if you didn't notice the changes, you'd have only thought there were 2. The painting in the living room had 3 different versions, and the one in the bedroom had 3 as well. I did a whole video discussing what the paintings meant and why they changed, but I'll give a brief overview on them here. The paintings in the living room started as 4 separate white figures which had even gaps between them, and were almost symbolic of the 4 individuals that were in the holiday home. This was before any trouble had started occurring, and it was almost representing a steady pulse and rhythm, almost like a heartbeat, showing that things were okay and it was all quite calm. However, as the movie went on, the paintings got more and more chaotic until it didn't even resemble its original form. This was reflecting the state of the world and the chaos that was ensuing, showing that the world would eventually go on to be unrecognizable as the situation got worse and worse. The painting in the bedroom was something which also changed too. It started as the sea with some relatively rough waves and was quite low in terms of its height. However, as the movie developed on, by the end, the waves were taller than the characters, showing that it had increased and the water looked a lot rougher. Again, reflecting the situation and the fact that the nation was going to be turned onto its knees. The all-encompassing nature of the waves and the fact that the characters were amongst it was also showing that there was no going back, and they were being consumed by the waves and there was no escape from it. They were essentially going to drown in the problems that they were facing. The sad face on the clock. On the first night, prior to George and Ruth arriving at the house, by then, the only strange thing that had occurred was the White Lion ship that docked on the beach and caused mass disruption. But later on that evening, we saw that there was a shot of a clock, and on that clock it seemed like there was a sad face which was present on it. I think this is something which is symbolic of the fact that the countdown had begun, and that time was already running out. There was nothing that they could do about what was going to happen. We didn't know at the time that all of the chaos was about to happen, and neither did they, so it's a subtle nod to the fact that time was simply running out. Hope begins in the dark. In one of the final shots, after Rose was about to go into the underground bunker, there was a poster which was in a frame on the wall which read, "Hope begins in the dark." I think this was something which was essentially pointing to the fact that damage had been done to the world and that it needed to fall to its knees and be plunged into darkness for a brighter future to be built. At least that's what was happening to the world. When there's only darkness that is present, one can only hope that the light will arrive, and I feel that's what this poster meant. Dark times were on the horizon, and from there, people would change. The world would change, people would lose their prejudices. A reset would happen, and what could be considered a better world would be formed. So I feel that is the reason as to why that poster was the last thing that we saw before Rose entered underground and the safe haven of the panic room. The woman speaking in Spanish. There was a moment in the movie which Spanish speakers would have been able to understand, but I didn't have a clue at first. However, it appeared to be important, and it pointed towards things that were going to happen in the future. She said, "Thank God I found someone. I'm trying to get back to my home. I'm lost. I've been walking for a while. I need to use your phone. You're the first person I've seen all day. We have to get out of here. I just saw a plane that was spraying red gas in the vicinity. I saw some deer, more than 50. They were coming out of the woods. Please, I need to go home." A military plane appeared and fled. There's no one around. Is it a chemical attack? We saw Clay not giving the woman the time of day, despite it seeming as though she was in need of desperate help. Something which tied into the prejudices that people have and how in order to survive they needed to let them pass. And what this showed us once translated is that she called out everything that eventually went on to happen, showing that they would have been better informed if, again, prejudices hadn't been what ruled them. We don't know if GH or Ruth spoke Spanish. They might have done, and if they did, they would have been able to have translated what she said, and it would have provided some extra clarity to what was going on. Whilst on the topic of the deer, I haven't covered them in this video because I did a full video focusing specifically on them on the channel where they got a main 10-minute focus, so you'll find that there, as there were lots of different theories around what they could have meant. This movie played with symbolism, images and metaphors a lot. And whilst there are no definitive answers as to what it all meant, it's something that's subjective and left up to interpretation. And I think that's probably the best way to have it, because it keeps it even more intriguing. What did you think of the use of symbolism and the hidden details? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe.
I found all that very interesting, and especially when they started to show the trailer Civil War that is supposed to be coming out at the end of this month. And it just made me like, damn, motherfuckers better start paying attention, like for real, because I feel like we're so distracted with virtual reality that we're not paying attention what's going on in reality in real time. So I hope people see those little things, because I did see a lot of I don't call it symbolism, but I call it familiarities. And the reason why I say familiarities is because it was similar, right? It was familiar and similar because of the simple fact of, you know, today kids are so stuck into technology, you know, their phones. But if that went down, you know, they couldn't communicate. You know, they couldn't get on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. How would they communicate with their friends? You know what I'm saying? How would we be able to communicate? And also I see as well as, especially when it came to, you know, the woman speaking Spanish, is I think as well, it's not even just about, you know, the Spanish, it's about the language barriers, because I think people, well, even then too, prejudice, because yeah, it does, you know, I simply, yeah, why didn't he? Because he couldn't understand her. You know, there goes into a lot of other, you know, questions. But I want to get into this George Orwell quote, and because today I see it happening again in real time. And if we don't understand our past, we can't understand our present. So let me play this real quick. This is about a 15-minute video.
In 1940, George Orwell wrote, "Almost certainly we are moving into an age of totalitarian dictatorships, an age in which freedom of thought will be at first a deadly sin and later on a meaningless abstraction. the autonomous individual is going to be stamped out of existence. George Orwell's dystopian novel 1984 is a work of fiction, but much that is depicted in it reflects the political realities of many nations, past and present. At least 3/4 of what Orwell narrates is not negative utopia, but history, Umberto Eco wrote. Referring to his time spent in Belgrade under communist rule, Lawrence Durrell wrote that reading 1984 in a communist country is really an experience because one can see it all around one. In this video, we are going to explore some of the similarities between the totalitarian systems of the 20th century and Orwell's 1984. And as will become evident, many of these totalitarian traits are re-emerging in the modern world. This will be conducted in the recognition that totalitarianism relies on mass support, and so contemporary societies desperately need more people to withdraw their support of this brutal form of rule. Shortly after 1984 was published, Orwell explained, "The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you." Totalitarianism is a political system whereby a centralized state apparatus attempts to control virtually all aspects of life. Everything within the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state, the Italian dictator Mussolini succinctly put it. While totalitarianism can emerge under the guise of various political ideologies, in the 20th century it was communism and fascism that provided the ideological support for this type of rule. Communism and fascism are often viewed as being on opposite ends of the political spectrum, but in the manner they were put into practice in the 20th century, both of these systems displayed the characteristics of the totalized, all-controlling state. Both used force and propaganda to attain power, crush economic and civil liberties, smother culture, partake in mass surveillance, and terrorize the citizenry with psychological warfare and eventually mass imprisonment and mass murder. Speaking of Stalin's communist Russia and Hitler's Nazi Germany, Orwell explained, "The two regimes, having started from opposite ends, are rapidly evolving towards the same system, a form of oligarchical collectivism. In the communist and fascist political systems of the 20th century and in 1984, the totalitarian regime maintained a tight grip of control on the populace through the use of manufactured fear. Totalitarian leaders, whether of the right or of the left, know better than anyone else how to make use of fear. They thrive on chaos and bewilderment. The strategy of fear is one of their most valuable tactics." In 1984, continuous war between the three superstates perpetuated this state of fear. It was not important who was at war with who, or who was allied with who, as this was changing all the time. And the point of the war was not for one superstate to conquer another, but for all three superstates to work behind the scenes to create the conditions of terror that would enable them all to institute totalitarian controls within their own borders. Constant surveillance of all of the citizens was an additional tool in the arsenal of the totalitarian regime of 1984. Surveillance not only allowed for more effective overt control of the citizenry, but it also induced paranoia, which made it less likely that any citizen would even dare step out of line. This surveillance was achieved, firstly, through the technology of the telescreen, which was installed in everyone's home and throughout the streets, and as Orwell explained, the telescreen received and transmitted simultaneously. There was, of course, no way of knowing whether you were being watched at any.
So I want to stop this for a minute, right? Because when we talk about the surveillance and things, and we need to put it in today's time, I could literally, I'm going to show y'all something. Hey, Siri. Yeah, y'all hear that? I can literally just pick up my phone. Hey, Siri. Hey, Siri. Are you listening to me even when I'm not asking to talk to you? No, it says, I respect your privacy and only listen when you're talking to me. You can learn. See, But it said, how is it though? But it said it knows to when I say Siri. So how do I know my phone isn't always not listening to me? Or even because we talk about these Alexas, these all these home units. How is it they not always listening? Because you know, people talk about how they wanted their privacy and how much they hate the government, but yet literally like the robo vacuum cleaners, you letting these people in our homes and we don't even understand it, right? Because I would love for people to tell me that I'm wrong. I would love for somebody to say that I'm wrong, because we literally allow the government to infringe on our rights because we want the newest technology. How are they not listening to us at all times? But people don't understand that. Oh, he's a conspiracy theorist. Okay, whatever. Call me what you want to.
Any given moment. It was even conceivable that they watched everybody all the time. But at any rate, they could plug in your wire whenever they wanted to. You had to live, did live, from habit that became instinct, in the assumption that every sound you made was overheard, and, except in darkness, every movement scrutinized. Secondly, mass surveillance of the citizenry was conducted by the citizens of 1984 themselves. Each person watched everyone else, and each person was, in turn, watched by everyone else. The most innocent of expressions, an innocuous statement, or a subtle look of disapproval when Big Brother appeared on the telescreen, was reported to the thought police and treated as a thought crime or a face crime, as evidence that one was disloyal and had something to hide. It is intolerable to us that an erroneous thought should exist anywhere in the world, however secret and powerless it may be, Orwell has the character O'Brien explain. In Stalinist Russia, Alexander Solzhenitsyn noted that one could never be sure whether one's neighbors, friends, co-workers, the postman, or even in some cases one's own family, would report to the secret police a slip of the tongue, a criticism of Stalin or of communism. For if one was reported, their fate was usually sealed. The police would knock at the door in the middle of the night, and soon after one would be given the standard sentence of a tenor, that is, 10 years in the slave labor gulag prison camps. This form of surveillance created social conditions wherein most citizens adopted hypocrisy and lying as a way of life, or as Solzhenitsyn explains in the Gulag Archipelago. The permanent lie becomes the only safe form of existence. Every wag of the tongue can be overheard by someone, every facial expression observed by someone. Therefore, every word, if it does not have to be a direct lie, is nonetheless obliged not to contradict the general, common lie. There exists a collection of ready-made phrases, of labels, a selection of ready-made lies. In addition to a ubiquitous state of fear, in totalitarianism there exists a widespread state of confusion and mental disorientation amongst the citizenry. Many victims of totalitarianism have told me in interviews that the most upsetting experience they faced was the feeling of loss of logic, the state of confusion into which they had been brought, the state in which nothing had any validity. They simply did not know what was what. In 1984, widespread mental disorientation was stimulated via the falsification of history and the negation of the concept of objective truth. The Ministry of Truth was the institution which falsified history. Everything faded into mist. The past was erased. The eraser was forgotten. The lie became truth. One of the reasons totalitarian regimes attempt to alter history is because it rids the society of any past reference points or standards of comparison, which might remind the citizens that life in the past was so much better than it is in the sterile and oppressive present. Within 20 years at the most, the huge and simple question, was life better?
You know what's crazy is we really need to think about that, because this is very, very, very important right here, right? Because in 1965, when they passed the Civil Rights Act, did they think in 20 years how that act would better the lives of Black Americans? No. The 1994 crime bill, Did they think in 20 years what it would do? Because look what it did in 20 years. Look what it's done in 30. So we have to ask ourselves these simple questions, because if we don't understand the past, we can't move forward in the future, because we're going to keep on repeating history's mistakes. That's the whole thing about this. And there's obviously names for these systems for a reason. And if people would literally go back to the Willie Lynch letter, because that letter was written in the 1500s, literally the 1500s, before America was here. So I want people to literally to think and to remember that, because they tell us that it's not real. But how do we know it? Because we can literally find a transcript, a written piece of paper from that era that literally states, or even the making of a Negro Christian. But they tell us that shit's fake, that it's not real. How is it not when you can find it? Come on, man, y'all gotta wake up. Because I'm telling you right now, regardless if you vote Democrat or Republican, they're not for us. It's a totalitarian system. They fight each other. It's two totalitarian systems going head to head. Because when you flip that quarter, they say you get the lesser of two evils, right? It's either heads or tails. Either heads or tails, and I want people to see that. It's about a totalitarian system, because with Democrats, they want everybody, government control. They want you to want the government. And then you have Republicans who are small government. Government shouldn't be involved in your daily life, right? So you have two totalitarian systems. You got one that wants you to be breastfed, and then another one that wants you to be out there, get up off your bootstraps and go get it. Right. We definitely brought, to me, it's the same. I don't see it no differently. One wants one thing, the other one wants another thing. But I'll tell you at the end of the day that neither of those things, regardless if it's Democrat, Republican, Nazi, commie, they don't like we the people. They don't like Black Americans. It's about them controlling and being powerful in their own system. Because that's what this is about. It's about, because how do we see our legislation? It all goes by who's in power. Minnesota's getting screwed right now because the Democrats are in power. Where they're infringing on, they say the Republicans are infringing on our rights. But no, they're not. It's the Democrats. People need to wake up. There's a bill right now that was just introduced yesterday about voting rights, about being able to vote and not having an address. But see, people won't even understand of how that disfranchises us, because we're undereducated. Right. We are smart enough to govern ourselves. We are. But people don't want to see that, because they want to be on that titty. They want that breast milk. They want that breast milk. And that's what I'll tell you right now, that I thank that brother, Adam B. Coleman, because in his book, he teaches and speaks about becoming a Black victim to becoming a Black victor. And it's all about understanding that we already have the freedoms and liberties that our leaders telling us that we don't have, when at the end of the day, they're writing legislation to clamp it, to infringe on it, and we don't even understand that. So, but people will say, oh, no, that's not true. Yes, it is true.
Better before the revolution than it is now would have ceased once and for all to be answerable, wrote Orwell. But another reason history is falsified by totalitarians is to ensure there are no historical roots to which the citizen can anchor and find a truth, sustenance, and strength. In totalitarianism, there can be no historical information which contradicts or puts into question the reigning political ideology, nor any institution, such as religion, which offers the individual a refuge from the influence of the state. And so, as Orwell wrote in 1984, every record has been destroyed or falsified. Every book has been rewritten. Every picture has been repainted. Every statue and street and building has been renamed. Every date has been altered, and that process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped. Nothing exists except an endless present in which the party is always right. Along with destroying or falsifying the past, widespread mental
Well, if I don't
disorientation is
see
further
that
cultivated
in
by
Minnesota,
destroying
that
the
the
belief in
Democrats,
objective.
regardless of however they want to see it, they are always right. And this is what's crazy, because widespread mental disorientation, what do you think that gender affirming care is that the Democrats are doing? You don't think that's a widespread mental disorientation that they want to affect our children? Huh. So I'm just going to be quiet.
Truth. This is done through a program of psychological warfare. Incessant and intentionally confusing propaganda, conflicting reports, and blatant lies are pumped out in official reports and through the mass media at all hours of the day. What is said today has no bearing on what may be said tomorrow, for as Orwell explained, the totalitarian state sets up unquestionable dogmas, and it alters them from day to day. It needs the dogmas because it needs absolute obedience from its subjects, but it cannot avoid the changes which are dictated by the needs of power politics. In 1984, for example, the Ministry of Plenty put out a bulletin that they were increasing the chocolate ration to 20 grams a week. Orwell writes, and only yesterday, Winston reflected, it had been announced that the ration was to be reduced to 20 grams a week. Was it possible that the citizens could swallow that after only 24 hours? Yes, they swallowed it. Was he, then, alone in the possession of a memory? In addition, contradictions, hypocrisies, and lies form the foundation of the totalitarian ideology. The totalitarian system presents the enslavement of the individual as his or her liberation. Censoring information is called protecting the truth. The destruction of culture or the economy is called its development. The military occupation of other countries is labeled as the furtherance of freedom and peace. In 1984, the Ministry of Peace instigated wars, the Ministry of Truth manufactured propaganda, and the Ministry of Plenty created shortages. On the enormous pyramidal structure of the Ministry of Truth hung the words, war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. The official ideology abounds with contradictions even when there is no practical reason for them, Orwell explained in 1984. These contradictions are not accidental. The purpose of this all-encompassing program of psychological warfare is to bewilder the mind of the average citizen. For when the citizen is bombarded with contradictions and lies and lives in what Orwell called that shifting phantasmagoric world in which black may be white tomorrow and yesterday's weather can be changed by decree, he or she eventually ceases to know what to think or even how to think. The distinction between up and down, fact and fiction, truth and falsity, is not only blurred, but loses significance. The belief in objective truth disappears, and the average citizen becomes completely dependent on authority figures to feed him ideas, and thus is ready to assent to lies and to believe the most absurd things, so long as those in the political class deem it to be true. The Soviet official Georgy Pyatakov explained that the true Bolshevik would be ready to believe that black was white and white was black if the party required it. There was no particle left inside him which was not at one with the party, did not belong to it. In an essay titled Totalitarianism and the Lie, Leszek Kolakowski, a philosopher who was exiled from Poland for his criticisms of communism and Marxism, wrote, "This is what totalitarian regimes keep unceasingly trying to achieve. People whose memory, personal or collective, has been nationalized, has become state-owned and perfectly malleable, totally controllable, are entirely at the mercy of their rulers. They have been deprived of their identity. They are helpless and incapable of questioning anything they are told to believe. They will never revolt, never think, never create. They have been transformed into dead objects."
What's crazy is this this is what's crazy, because this literally right here, what is being explained, is literally, to me, sounds like the Democratic Party, right? Because they think that as long as we're given these tokenism things that we won't question, right? That's why we have these community leaders to silence us, to get us out of the way, for the simple fact of that the truth hurts their lies. It trumps their lies, right? And that's why they don't want us to be outspoken, right? That's why I don't care about a following, right? Because at the end of the day, people that have followings, right, they're not out here telling the truth because they're out here abiding by a system, right? Instead of doing what they want to do, they're out here talking about what they're allowed to talk about, right? Because if they don't, then they're going to be silenced. And we all know that, because that's why we have all of this confusion and this deflection and distraction, for the simple fact of, and people honestly don't even know who they are, because it's on purpose, right? That's why we have the conversation right now of FBA 1, FBA 2, foundational Black Americans, tetherers, all these motherfucking different names to call a person Black, right? It's because us Negroes, us niggas, are confused because we don't even know who we are. People out here talking about they 100% Black. What is that? Because I guarantee it, if you look down your lineage, it's not what is Black, nigga, because I guarantee it, you have some type of different tribe. You don't have all your ancestors aren't Nigerian. If you're a Black American, if you're an American descendant of slavery, I can guarantee it, and your lineage does not go back to one tribe back in Africa. So let's stop the bullshit. Ain't nobody out here, and for y'all to say that y'all are 100%, if you're an African descendant of slavery, you have somewhere down the lineage, you have whiteness in you. I don't give a fuck what you say. You have white or native or some type of other ethnic group in your background. There's no, listen, man. Either it was by force or it was an enjoyable relationship, but either or it happened. And that's just facts, because we've seen all the things that have happened to our Black women, to our Black men. So I don't want to sit there and hear people say, oh, I know stop it. Stop it. Stop it. That's all I gotta say. Stop it. Because you don't even know your lineage. We can't even go back 3-4 generations. Most of us can't. So let me see you go all the way back to the time that your people got up here off the ship. Then let me see your lineage, right? All the way down. I want to see it.
In 1984, the main character Winston manages for most of the book to stand psychologically outside the grasp of the party and its leader, Big Brother, despite the widespread fear and mental disorientation which swirls around him. Down with Big Brother, he writes in his diary early in the book. However, after being arrested by the thought police and subjected to re-education, Winston abdicates his reason and conscience and begins to accept the lies. He joins the totalitarian cult and becomes another brick in the wall of the all-powerful state. Referring to Winston, Orwell writes, "He could not fight against the party any longer. Besides, the party was in the right. It was merely a question of learning to think as they thought." The pencil felt thick and awkward in Winston's fingers. He began to write down the thoughts that came into his head. He wrote first, in large clumsy capitals, "Freedom is slavery." Then, almost without a pause, he wrote beneath it, "2 and 2 make 5." The struggle was finished. He had won the victory over himself. He loved Big Brother. Some have taken this ending as a sign of Orwell's pessimism, as an indication that humanity is doomed to a totalitarian future. Yet Orwell's motive for writing this book was not to depress nor promote a fatalistic apathy, but to warn and rouse to action as many people as possible. For Orwell understood as well as anyone that in the battle between totalitarianism and freedom, no one can afford to stand aside. The fate of each and every one of us hangs in the balance.
Don't let it happen. It depends on you.
there's a quote that a lot of people say, and it makes me go back to what George Orwell said, is don't let it happen, and that we needed to rise up and come together. Is if not us, then who? If not now, then when? And I want people to think about that, right? Because if not us, then who? Right? Because our forefathers, our ancestors, we got to continue on that legacy. Malcolm didn't die for no reason, man. I'm tired of that shit. Martin, Fred, all of our activists. Here's the crazy thing. We don't even talk about the activists that we've lost since 2020. I talk a lot about Malcolm and Martin. I don't talk about the activists that we've literally lost since 2020, since this fight, since I joined this fight. How many activists we've lost, right? That have gone missing, that we don't even talk about, that were out here spreading the truth, and their cities literally killed them. Some of them. Don't nobody talk about that, all the shit that happened in Louisville, with all them activists being killed and gone missing. Don't nobody talk about the activists in Minneapolis that were killed or gone missing. Nobody talks about them. Out of sight, out of mind, because they don't want you to remember that shit. They don't want you to remember that shit. They don't want you to remember them babies that are out there being killed, right? Because they want you to remember them 3 police officers, them 3 law enforcement, right? Them 3 first responders. They don't want us to remember the ones that are out here that just go outside of their house and want to live life. No, man. And then we allow our leaders to program, to indoctrinate us into a totalitarian system. And tell me I'm wrong, because that's what we're fighting. When it comes down to Democrats and Republicans, it's 2 totalitarian systems fighting each other. That's all it is. It is 2 systems fighting each other. Why don't people see that? Because we got to really stop trying to overthink this shit and see it for what it really is, because we can really simplify this shit if people will go educate themselves. Don't let them erase our past. Don't let them erase our history. Because that's what they're doing. When we sit here and we're debating over where we come from, we know we're Americans, right? Because I know I was born in Minneapolis. I know I was born in St. Mary's Hospital. I know who my mother, my father is, right? Right? So what are we out here fighting? Because they regardless of whatever, they don't like us. Because it's about a system. It's about a totalitarian system that wants to control and be in power. It has nothing to do about our communities. It has nothing to do about, because here's the thing of it is, right? There's a video that is going around on Twitter right now. I think it's at like 3 million views, the last that I seen it was. But it was taken in Chicago yesterday by Dom Lucre and Mark Carter, who are niggas for Trump, whatever. But they took this video and they went to different encampments. One encampment was of veterans, American veterans, and another encampment was of migrants. And it was crazy how the difference of the encampments were. They had heated tents. The migrant encampment got food delivered. They had porta potties. But then when you went to the homeless veterans encampment, there was trash. They didn't have porta potties. They weren't getting no food delivered from restaurants. They didn't have heated tents. And I'm just like, wow. So that's how we treat people that fought for our country. But yet we'll give people that just come over here any and everything, while we're forgetting about people that actually fought for our so-called freedom and liberties in these propaganda and proxy wars. But y'all don't want to talk about that, right? Y'all don't want to talk about that. Because I'll tell you right now, I don't give a fuck about Juneteenth. I don't give a fuck about Black history if we're not out here telling the truth about it. Because I get tired of hearing about African diaspora. That has nothing to do about Black American history. Nothing. Nothing. It's fine and dandy if we want to talk about it, but that is our roots. But we can't understand that because at the end of the day, we will never fully understand where we come from. Because when our ancestors got here, there ain't no fucking names. They're numbers. So unless you have your ancestor's slave number, that's the only way you're going to find your peoples. And then ain't even going to have what continent they came from, what tribe. So I get tired of people saying they understand, they know where they come from, because no, you don't. Because if you can't, here's the thing of it is, right? And I want people to understand this. If you say you're an American descendant of slavery, right? You can't tell me that the furthest that you can go through your lineage, right, is basically a number in a book, in a slave book, of where they came in and they branded them, right? Because we didn't get names until we were bought and paid for, right? Just like how we buy new cars and we give them names, same motherfucking way. Same way. Same way, right? Because until then we had numbers. We were numbered, just like when you go to the DOC. That number stays with you, because mine is 1987-29. And if I go to the feds, it'll be another number. If I go to another penitentiary that's in another state, I'll get another number. But my Minnesota identification number for the Department of Corrections is 1987-29, right? Because that's what I'm known as. Because you don't get no mail in there. They just put your name. Because they don't know a Chaz Neal, but they know an inmate 1987-29. So I don't want to, and we can debate on this all day. Bless up, bless up. We can debate on this all day. But if you can't show me facts like I can show you facts, then let's leave the conversation alone, because I don't want to be going back. You're not going to call me names for out here telling the truth, right? You're not going to call me names. Just like how you see some people talk about, I'm a BIPOC, I'm POC, I'm Nigerian. Wait, my brother, what do you mean? What are you? How are you BIPOC, a person of color, and Nigerian? But come on now, man, you doing 3 nationalities in one little statement. Where is Black Americans involved in that? That's what I'm saying. We got people out here fighting for us that say they're for us, but they ain't fighting for us. They're fighting for a totalitarian system. Because how is it we have all of this legislation, right? All of this legislation proclaiming racism a public health crisis, but yet they don't address it. They don't address it. Yeah, that's the whole thing of it is, because if people go back and you take the symbolism and you look at these movies from a Stephen King or, George Orwell, people that made you think outside of the box and you thought were maybe crazy. Oh, like, damn, motherfucker, cool. Because look what they did to Dr. Sebi. Come on now. And we still don't believe it. We've seen it with Gandhi. We've seen it with Nelson Mandela. Any freedom fighter. We've seen it with Gaddafi. Anybody that comes out here and speaks against their totalitarian system, they get rid of. Come on, man. That's what's crazy. That's what's crazy to me, is that we'll stand more behind a lie and throw stones and rocks at the person telling the truth, because we'd rather be with the masses instead of looking like asses. That's what's crazy to me. That's what's crazy to me, because people know that they're doing wrong, but they're too afraid to admit it. They're too afraid to admit it, because then they got to look in the mirror, right? Then they got to look in the mirror. That's why I laugh at a lot of these black pastors, because y'all ain't going to heaven. God don't like ugly. God don't like ugly. And one of the 10 commandments was, thou shalt not steal. See, and a lot of black pastors and the black churches, they steal from their black community. So you tell me how they gonna get up into heaven, how God gonna open up the gates for them when they don't even go by his 10 commandments. Same thing. Same thing with these Democrats. Because at the end of the day, we can live in man's law, but God's law is the one that rules. Because man's law can change. God's law doesn't. God's law can't ever change, right? But man's law can, because it all goes on perspective and opinions and life perspectives. But God was written for that. That's what I don't understand, man, about people is we don't even understand it. We sit here and we praise false prophets. We sit there and we go to a church and listen to a pastor get on his pulpit and preach lies. And preach lies. And preach lies. And you mean to tell me y'all going to heaven? Because God don't like ugly. One of the 10 thou shalt not steal. Adultery. All these things that God disliked that they do. And you mean to tell me they going to heaven and y'all follow behind that? Where y'all going? Because if they're going to hell, where you think you going? Stop it. Make it make sense. Y'all going to hell. Because God, here's the thing. I love all, right? I love all. But I'm going to keep it 100. God made Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve. It's man's law that has allowed the fuckery. Man's law has allowed the fuckery. Because God loved all, regardless of whatever you were. But at the end of the day, God created Adam and Eve to produce, because Adam and Steve can't. And Eve and Stevia can't either. So I'm just putting it out there. Come on now, make it make sense to me. Because whose law are we going by? A man's law that can change by looking at the way that they, maybe their wealth, their age, their gender, their race, their wealth class, their religion, their sex, their gender, their orientation. Come on, man, cut the fuck out. Cut it the fuck out. And y'all mean to tell me y'all these people going to heaven? Everything that God literally stated, they're the opposite. A lot of these black churches, these black pastors, and y'all will follow them, knowing that, and y'all talking about they going to heaven. Y'all going to hell. I'm sorry. Y'all going to hell. Because y'all know these pastors be predators, be perverts. Right. It definitely has, man. It's just crazy. We have made it. It is. And that's what really trips me out, because people don't even understand it. Right? God created Adam and Eve. God said, love thy neighbor. Who out here loving thy neighbor? Because we the first one to judge somebody because of maybe they don't have the same as us. We have a nicer car, or they got rundown shoes. We always judging somebody off of something. And all God said was, love thy neighbor. Right. That's what I'm saying. It's about, for me, it's about the shit that they do to the kids. They want to take the parents' rights away. You know, they want us to be, that's what I say about government. You know, they want to be, the Democrats want Big Brother to be involved in everything they do. They want to tell you how to parent, how they're going to school your kids, what you should feed your kids. Y'all might as well have the pacifier in your mouths too, because at the end of the day, you don't want any different. You want to be on the nipple. You want to be on food stamps, on Section 8, on WIC, on Medicare, instead of actually getting things that self-sufficiently and having dignity. Because right now we don't have no dignity as Americans, because we get fucked by both parties and people don't want to realize it. Right? We get fucked by both parties and people don't even want to realize it. But because we're too undereducated, I don't know how many times a day I get into it with white liberals, white conservatives, black liberals, black conservatives, all because I don't agree with their totalitarian system. And I will never agree with a totalitarian system, regardless if it's red or blue, right? Because it's about us. It's about the community. It's about we the people. This ain't about no establishment. It's not about a political party. It's about the truth. You either on God's side or the other side. And right now, both parties are on the other side. They're not on God's side. They're not following God's law. Right? They're not following God's law, which everybody, because at the end of the day, we're all born in religion. Everybody. You might not be baptized, but your parents put you in some kind of religion when you was a kid. Everybody done been to Sunday school, regardless if it was Lutheran, Baptist, Methodist, Jehovah's Witness, Mormon, science, the Church of Scientology, whatever it was. We all went to something. Muslim, Islam, Moors, whatever. It was all, we all done did something. And they all preached the same thing. So where did we go wrong when they literally say that man's law can be changed? God's law can't. Because man's law all goes on emotion, perspective, opinion, because it can all be read differently. And until we understand that words matter, we ain't gonna get nowhere, because we're too busy fighting over what the definition is instead of just looking at the shit for what it really is. It's all about wordplay. It's all about power. It's all about the past, and it's about the present. Because if we don't understand the past, you can't understand what's going on in the present, and you damn sure ain't gonna be able to help in the future. Because why are we letting them erase our history slowly? Why is all the information archived about massacres, right? Because I'll tell you right now, they don't want us to remember a time before 1965, before all this legislation, when blacks were living in harmony. Maybe not as we envision it, but it was better than I guarantee it was better, at least a little bit, because all we was able to do was be able to what? So we didn't see the colored signs anymore, that this was a black only fountain, or that we had to sit in the back of the bus. Nigga, it don't even matter. I'd rather see it up front in person than all the sly shit that goes on. Because that's what we get nowadays, right? We know what we get with some Republicans. They racist. They'll come out and call you a nigger. They'll come out and call you a fag, right? But when it comes to the Democrats, they're gonna tell you they love you. They're your ally. But look at their legislation and see how it hurts you, right? See how it hurts you. Because at the end of the day, you might be gay, but if you're a black man, you black first. You black first. You black first. You black first. So that's what I want to say. I don't really know what's going on. I'm trying not to pay attention to my phone, so I don't know what's going on with the phone service shit. I will keep you guys updated here on. I'll make posts on Twitter, on Facebook. I will keep people updated. Also watch House committees today. If you're able to, there's public safety. They will be talking about the SRO bill. I think that's at 1. So it don't stop. It's Thursday. You know what I'm saying? It's the end of almost the end of the week. We're coming into it, but hey, we educating, so we're gonna liberate. It's just day by day. We're work in progress, right? That's what we're gonna call us. We're works in progress. Because we're gonna progress together. Together. It doesn't matter that there's only 13 people on here, because we're gonna do it together. We're gonna do it together, right? Because you 13 are gonna go speak to other people, then that becomes 26. Then that 26 becomes 52. Then it becomes 104. Then it becomes 208, right? Then it becomes 516, right? Because it grows. Oh, I probably went a little bit too far, right? No, it is not. So 208, 416, right? Then it goes to 832. It doubles, right? Because that's what the power of the people can do. It's about word of mouth. I know that I come on here, but I know that people are having conversations. I know that y'all have conversations because it's interesting topics, because it's going on in today's times. You're wondering, how do Obama phones work? And they're free, but a phone that I pay over $100 a month for ain't working right now. Make it make sense. Because that's what's happening this morning. The government phones, they working, right? They working. Because I've talked to numerous people that have Obama phones, and their phones are working just fine in them areas, right? But when I talk to other people that pay monthly bills, their phones ain't working. They say SOS. So you tell me what the fuck is really going on. So, and with that, I want people to have a great Thursday. You know, they say it's Thirsty Thursday, but let's be celibate, because alcohol, you're allowing these demons, these spirits into your body that we don't need. So pick up a blunt. If you got Swisher, if you got whatever you smoke it with, light it up, man. Light it up, puff, past this bitch, because I'm telling you right now, if we was a world full of smokers instead of a world full of drinkers, we'd be in a way better motherfucking place. We'd have more coughers than throw-uppers. Think about it. We'd have more coughers than throw-uppers. Everybody be like, damn, that's COVID. No, nigga, that's that weed. It's that weed. That's that weed cough, right? Because I see people be like, oh, it's a whole lot of cough syrup. Weed make the world go round. Weed make peace. What you think they was smoking? The peace pipe, my nigga. Everybody go grab a blunt, light it up, and pass it around your neighborhood. Because that's what brings peace. That's what brings people together. Because weed don't make you want to fight, right? Weed make your ass sit down and think. That's what we need. We need more weed smokers. Not y'all niggas out here smoking K2. Not you niggas out here smoking Angel Dust. Our PCP, our Fetty. Nah. We need niggas like them chiefers, them smokers, right? Because you know what's crazy is I sat here and I think some of the biggest smokers that I've ever smoked with in the last 4 years, and they truth tellers. We're not like Marcus. That nigga can outsmoke me, right? George Floyd brother, that nigga, man, let me tell y'all, man, I got stories, bro. That nigga smoked us on his back, like 8 blunts, back to back. Man, I'm talking about I was in a haze. In a haze. I was sitting there downtown Minneapolis in the middle of the night when we took over downtown for the Derek Chauvin trial, and we just, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. We got a bunch of us just out here just smoking right out there in front of the government center, out there for making sure that we got justice and accountability, right? Even though we really didn't get it, because we all seen the fall of Minneapolis. We all seen they're lying. We've all seen the chief of police get up there and perjure himself. Minneapolis is still killing black men. They're still imprisoning black men wrongfully. They're still violating our civil rights. So y'all have a great Thursday. And I know I didn't say that like 3 times already, but have a great Thursday. I will be back same time, same place tomorrow morning. Be there, be square. Win or fail, freedom or jail, heaven or hell. Wish me well. Y'all have a great one. Urban Conservative.